Yeah. Oh, I see it down the first one. It's not live. Why is it me? I'm stopping mine for now.
Lisa, you're not muted.
So here's what's going on. We're supposed to be on Facebook, but for some reason the city's put us on YouTube, which we thought we were not going to be on YouTube. So now we're having to go to our website and redirect folks to the YouTube channel rather than Facebook, which was posted on our website. So we're on YouTube right now, just so everyone knows.
Can we go ahead and start?
No, we probably shouldn't start until we have notification that we're actually, so folks can go to the YouTube channel to watch it. Because right now they're trying to go to Facebook and there's nothing there.
Therese says, can we get it posted on the Sharmec? I'll email Lorena.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. I really appreciate it. This is another one. YouTube.
All right, Rick. Rick,
Yes,
we are ready to go.
we are.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your patience as we got the technical glitches worked out, hopefully. The May 26, 2020 meeting of the Board of Adjustments is now in session. I am Rick Sanders. Also sitting on today's board is Terry Brown, Deborah Dryden, Douglas Wilson, Emma Allen, and John Floyd. Also present are Chad Spencer, the zoning administrator, Jason McCarter, the planning project manager, Sheree Hegler-Gray, the senior assistant city attorney, Andrea Leslie Fight, senior assistant city attorney, Max Oliver, clerk to the board, and Atkins Court Reporting, the verbatim reporter. I would like to start by acknowledging that we are conducting this meeting using a remote electronic platform. This is the first remote meeting of the Charlotte Zoning Board of Adjustments, and I would like to ask for your patience today as we proceed, because there might be some slight delays as we transition between speakers, participants, and presentations. The Zoning Board of Adjustments is a quasi-judicial body that is governed by the North Carolina Journal statutes and the Charlotte Zoning Ordinance. We conduct evidentiary hearings on requests for variance and appeals, among other requests. Before we begin the evidentiary hearings on today's agenda, I would like to provide some important information on the steps that were taken to ensure that each party's due process rights are protected as we proceed in this remote platform. First, today's meeting will be conducted in accordance with the newly enacted state statutes passed by the North Carolina General Assembly in Session Law 2020-3 that allows for remote meetings and quasi-judicial hearings during declarations of emergency. Second, each applicant was notified before being placed on today's agenda. This meeting would be conducted using our remote electronic platform. Every applicant on today's agenda has consented to the board conducting the evidentiary hearing on their request using the remote platform. If there's any objection to proceeding in this platform, the case will be continued to the regular agenda to be heard in person at a later date. Third, Notice of this meeting was provided to the applicants and the public in a number of ways. Notice of today's hearing was mailed to property owners within 300 feet of each subject property and notified the property owners of the remote electronic platform, and the letters also stated to contact the city immediately if there were any objections to the case or the remote electronic platform. I would like to emphasize that no cases are proceeding today in which the city received any objection to the case itself being heard or the remote meeting platform. Notice was also provided by placing signs on each property and by publishing notice on the city's website. The notices for today's meeting contain information about means by which the public can access today's proceedings. Finally, any individual wishing to participate in today's evidentiary hearings were required to sign up prior to today's proceedings. This information was also included on the board's website. Again, I would like to emphasize that no case today is proceeding which anyone objected to the case itself, remote meeting platform by which the hearing is being conducted. We'll be hearing one type of case today, an application for a variance from the regulations in the zoning ordinance. The order of the recommendation agenda will be as follows. The zoning administrator or zoning staff member will identify the case and recommend approval of the variance with any recommended conditions based on specific reasons. The chairperson will ask if anyone wants to speak in opposition. If there is such a person, then the case will be moved to the regular agenda and will be heard at a later date. The chairperson will ask if the board wishes to continue or to question the staff, or if for any reason the board wishes to move the case to the regular agenda. The chairperson will call for a motion and a second to approve the variance, and the chairperson will hold a roll call vote. If you feel there is a conflict of interest of any member of the board or an association that would prejudice your case, please let it be known at the start of your case. The board is acting in a quasi-judicial capacity for purposes of this hearing and can accept only sworn testimony. While the board will not specifically exclude hearsay evidence, it is only given limited weight. The North Carolina State Bar has issued an advisory opinion that is the unauthorized for an individual who is not an active member of the bar to appear for otherwise assist for purposes of quasi-judicial hearings on zoning and these matters. All applicants should have been provided with a copy of that advisory opinion at the time you filed your application. If you are a property owner or a non-lawyer here on behalf of a property owner and have not received a copy of the opinion, please use the WebEx platform function to virtually raise your hand and the clerk will provide it to you. If, as a result of this advisory opinion, the applicant would like to request a continuance of his or her case, the board will consider such request at the start of that case. Appeal from this board is to the Mecklenburg County Superior Court. You have 30 days from the date of the board's written decision in which to appeal, in accordance with North Carolina General Statute 160A-388E. In order to receive a written copy of the decision, any aggrieved party must file a written request for a copy of the board's decision by filling out the form, which must be filed with the board's clerk or chairperson at the time of the hearing or the case. Please remember to mute your microphone when you do not intend to speak. We will hear 9 cases today. If any case is opposed, it will be removed from the regular agenda and heard at a later date. The first case is number 2020-014, 935 South Summit Street, presented by Lisa Carter.
Should I announce it?
But before we get started, I wanted to go ahead and make sure there's no objections to any of the cases so that we make sure we can only hear the recommended agenda items today. And if there isn't any objection, we'll have to move those cases to the regular agenda to be heard at a later date. So for case 2020-014, Magnus Capital Partners, the property located at 935 South Summit Avenue, is there any objections? Anybody have any objections to this case being heard today? Max and Lisa, do you see anything?
No objections.
Okay. For case 2020-015, John and Jen Mayo, represented by David W. Murray, for the property located at 962 Blackberry Circle. Are there any objections for this case?
No objection.
He just said black.
For case number 2020-017, Schumacher Homes of Carolina, property located at 12308 Haymarket Road. Are there any objections for this case?
No objections.
Okay. Hearing none, we'll assume there's no objections. For case number 2020-020, Peter Tajay of ESP Associates Incorporated for property located at 1224 North Tryon Street. Are there any objections to this case?
No objections.
Case number 2020-023, Michael D. Hubert for Vista Homes for property located at 1500 Hawthorne Lane. Are there any objections for this case?
No objections.
Case number 2020-028, Kenneth and Laura Korsig, represented by Suzanne Todd, for property located at 1642 Hertford Road. Are there any objections for this case?
No objections.
Case number 2020-032, Ali Talibi and Sanaz Boromand, represented by Suzanne Todd, for property located at 2609 Hampton Avenue. Are there any objections for this case?
Yes, we did receive objections for this case.
All right, then this case, 2020-032, will be moved to the regular agenda at the next in-person meeting. Case number 2020-035, Tom Duncan for property located at 4505 Eagle Lake Drive. Are there any objections for this case?
No objections.
And finally, case number 2020-037, Mark Patterson for property located at 2320 Arden Street. Are there any objections for this case?
Yes, we did receive objections.
All right, so therefore, case number 2020-037 will be moved to the regular agenda at the next in-person board meeting. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Well, those who plan to give testimony today, please be sworn in. So I guess that would be Lisa and Shad. Please, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter at hand?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. Lisa, will you please go ahead and begin with case number 2020-014. Max, before we get started, Lisa, Max, are you able to mute everybody, or how is this going to work? Because I know that we have 30 people, we have 14 panelists, and it looks to be another 16 people have called in or attending.
Rick, I'm sorry, I missed the question.
Are you able to mute everybody, or just a panelist, or how is this working? Since there appear to be 14 panelists and 16 attendees.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay. The first variance case we have is 2 variances to allow for the construction of a new floodplain ordinance compliance office building, replacing a non-compliant building within the community floodplain boundary. And the first variance is to allow parking spaces to be more than 5.5 feet below the community base flood elevation. And the second variance is to eliminate the requirement for dryland access. And I'll give you a second to look over your findings. Just let me know when you'd like me to proceed.
Okay. Also, in this case, I wanted to make it known that Board Member John Floyd is conflicted out of this case due to a working relationship. However, we still have 5 board members to hear this case. Go ahead, Lisa.
All right, here's a vicinity map of the property. You can see the property is located right next to I-77. The zoning is I-1 light industrial. This is Exhibit 2. It's also in the West Moorhead pedestrian overlay. This is an aerial map of the property. And then this is a close-up aerial map of the property. Exhibit 5 is the floodplain areas. You can see the different FEMA floodway, community floodway, and the floodplain areas. The variance requests on Exhibit 6 are a variance to allow parking spaces to be more than half foot below community base flood elevation, and a variance to eliminate the requirement for dry land access. And this is for the redevelopment of the property to replace an existing non-compliant building and demolish it and rebuild a new floodplain ordinance compliant building. The parking does exceed the minimum required per ordinance, and this will provide access to the property.
Lisa, are those pictures of the proposed development or the current?
These are pictures of the current development, and if you give me just 1 second, we've just had a technical glitch. Okay, and that is the end of my presentation if you have any questions.
Are there any questions for staff from the board? If there are any questions, please make sure to unmute yourself before you ask the question. Hearing no questions, is there any reason the board thinks this should be moved to a regular agenda item at the next in-person meeting? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Move to approve the variance. I second.
And who is the, we need, when you make a motion, we need to state your name so that for the court reporter so that she can make sure we have it.
This is Terry Brown. I move to approve the variance. And I second it. This is Douglas Wilson.
All right, we have a motion by Terry Brown, a second by Mr. Wilson. We will do a roll call vote. Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Ms. Allen?
Aye.
Mrs. Dryden?
Aye.
Sanderson? Yes. The variance is approved. Okay, let's go to the next case.
The next case is a variance for a residential rear yard variance. A variance request of 10 feet from the required 40-foot rear yard to bring existing finished heated square feet into compliance. And I'll give you a moment to look over your staff report.
Okay, please proceed.
Exhibit number 1 is a vicinity map of the property. Exhibit number 2 is a zoning map. The zoning is R4 single family zoning. Exhibit number 3 is an aerial map of the property. You can see the property is in a residential area. And exhibit 4 is a close-up aerial map of the property. The property is on the bulb of a cul-de-sac and is an irregular shape. The original home was constructed in 1954, and it had a garage on the side. In 2011, the applicants added heated square feet over the garage, and this is the permit application. The garage was permitted to encroach, but the heated square feet was not permitted to encroach into the rear yard, and I'll go further into that in the next slide. The zoning is R4 single family, which requires a 40-foot rear yard. So the request is to encroach 10 feet into the 40-foot rear yard and allow a 30-foot rear yard. Unheated encroachments are allowed, so the garage was allowed to encroach 25% of the rear yard and was compliant. Once the heated square feet was added, that's when it was not compliant with the zoning ordinance. The survey that was submitted with the permit application to add the heated square feet over the garage measured the distance of the rear yard from the midline and not from the garage, and it said 56 feet. So that could have been why staff thought it was compliant with the regulations. And then here are approved plans that were submitted with the application showing the heated square feet over the garage. So that's the end of my presentation. If you have any questions.
Lisa, how was this case brought to staff's attention?
The applicant was going to sell the property and they got a survey for the close.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board for staff?
Can you repeat that?
Are there any questions from the board for staff? Hearing none. Is there any reason the board wishes to move this item to the regular agenda? Okay, is there a motion?
This is Terry Brown. I move to approve the variance.
I second the motion. This is Douglas Wilson.
We have a motion to approve the variance by Mr. Brown, a second by Mr. Wilson. We'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Floyd?
Aye.
Mrs. Dryden?
Aye.
Sanderson, yes. So the variance is approved. I was remiss, so we need to go ahead and do the approved findings of fact and the law in this case, and then we'll go back to the show on that. So,
Right.
yes.
Did you mean to call me? I didn't hear you call me. This is Emma.
Not this time, Emma. Sorry.
All right, no.
Are there any revisions or to the findings of fact and conclusions of law for this case?
This is Terry Brown. I didn't see any.
Okay, is there a motion?
Terry Brown,
Oh, sorry about that.
Terry Brown again. Move to approve the findings of fact and conclusion of law as written.
And I'll second that. This is Douglas Wilson.
All right, and we'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Brown? To approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law as written. Sorry.
Aye.
Mr. Brown.
Terry Brown, aye. Yes.
Okay. Mr. Wilson.
Douglas Wilson, yes.
Mr. Floyd.
John Floyd, yes.
Mrs. Dryden.
Yes.
Sanderson, yes. Okay. Thank you. Let's go back to the first case, 2020-014. Are there any revisions to the findings of fact and conclusions of law on that case? Is there a motion to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law on case 2020-014?
This is Douglas Wilson. I make a motion to approve the finding of facts and law.
Okay. There a second?
This is Deborah Dryden. I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Wilson, a second by Mrs. Dryden to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law in case 2020-014 as written. We'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Dryden?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Allen?
Aye.
Sanderson, yes. Okay, so those are approved. So let's go to the third case, 2020-017.
The next case is for a 100-foot lake buffer variance. There are two parts to this variance, a 34-foot variance from the 100-foot Mountain Island Lake water quality buffer, and a 2-foot variance from the required 30-foot setback. And I'll give you a minute to look at your findings. Just let me know when you'd like me to proceed.
Hey, Lisa, please proceed.
All right. Exhibit 1 is the vicinity map of the property. The property is located on Mountain Island Lake. Exhibit 2 is a zoning map of the property. The property is zoned R5 single family and is located in the Mountain Island Lake Critical Area 4. Exhibit 3 is an aerial map of the property. And Exhibit 4 is an aerial close-up of the property. Exhibit 5 shows the watershed buffer. There's a 100-foot watershed buffer measured from Mountain Island Lake. And the applicant is requesting 2 variances to allow a new home located within the 100-foot buffer to encroach 34 feet for a 66-foot buffer from Mountain Island Lake, and also for a 2-foot encroachment into the 30-foot setback for a 28-foot setback. Exhibit 7 is a consideration of the request. The property plat specifies that the building setback line is 30 feet from the road right-of-way. So according to the zoning ordinance, the 30 feet would supersede the zoning required setback of 20 feet. So there's a larger setback on this property. So that, along with the watershed buffer, constricts the property. Exhibit 8 is another consideration. When the applicant submitted the plans, the water quality buffer was incorrectly shown at the rear of the property line, and it actually goes further up the property and into half of the proposed dwelling area. Exhibit 9, it shows you previous variance requests in the same area. There's been 5 other requests from the water quality buffer in the same area. And Exhibit 10 is staff recommended condition that a mitigation plan be approved by Charlotte-Mecklenburg Stormwater Services. And the applicant has already been working with Ron Eubanks with water quality on this plan. So it is in the process of being approved. Exhibit 11 is photos of the new home. And the first one is looking at the front of the home, and the second one you can kind of see where the property is situated in relation to the lake. So that's all I had. If you have any questions.
Yes, we didn't see Exhibit 11.
Okay, I think might be a delay.
Okay. I had a question. Said that the zoning ordinance requires 20-foot setback, but the deed, there's a picture, but the deed requires a 30-foot setback. Is that correct?
Yes, the approved plat shows a 30-foot setback, and that supersedes the zoning regulation of 20.
So this is, I guess, a question for Andrea or Teree or Shad. Since the deed has a more stringent setback, does the zoning board have the authority to override the?
Yes, it's still a zoning ordinance regulation because footnote to the setback requirements are that the plat will supersede the zoning regulation, so it still is a variance from the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. I was just wanting to get a clarification on that. Are there any questions for staff from the board? Hearing none, is there any reason that the board wishes to move this case to the regular agenda? Is there a motion?
This is Terry Brown. Motion to approve the variance.
Thank you, Terry.
This is Douglas Wilson. I second the motion.
Thank you, Douglas. We have a motion by Mr. Brown, a second by Mr. Wilson to approve the variance. We'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Brown?
Brown, yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Wilson, yes.
Mr. Floyd?
Floyd, yes.
Mrs. Dryden?
I just want to be clear, we're approving both of the requests for the variance or just one of them?
Both the requests for the variance, the 30-foot variance from the 100-foot Mountain Island Lake water quality buffer and the 2-foot variance from the required 30-foot setback.
Okay, I vote yes.
And Sanderson votes yes, so it's approved. Let's look at the findings of fact and conclusions of law. Are there any changes? If not, is there a motion?
Terry Brown, move to approve the findings of fact and conclusion of law as written.
This is Douglas Wilson. I second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Brown to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law as written, and a second by Mr. Wilson. We hear a roll call vote. Mr. Brown?
Brown, yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Wilson, yes.
Mr. Floyd?
Floyd, yes.
Mrs. Dryden?
Yes.
Sanderson, yes. All right. The next case is 2020-020. Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, the next case is a commercial buffer variance. The applicant is requesting a variance of 11 feet from a required 21-foot Class C buffer between a warehouse use and institutional use to allow redevelopment. And I'll give you a minute to look at your findings.
Okay, go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, Exhibit 1 is a vicinity map of the property. Exhibit 2 is a zoning map. The property is zoned I2, General Industrial. Exhibit 3 is an aerial map of the subject property. Exhibit 4 is a close-up aerial map of the property. The background of the property is the subject parcel was developed in 1945, and conditions as they exist today between the adjacent parcel that was developed in 1953 are that there was no buffer requirement at the time of development, so there's no buffer between the current use and the use next door. And then there's a proposed redevelopment and street improvement project coming that's going to provide traffic control, pavement surfacing and marking, curb and gutter, sidewalk, storm drainage, erosion control, and utilities. And it's called the 16th Street Streetscape Plan, and includes associated easements on the subject property that total about a little under 1 acre that will be needed for stormwater, sanitary, sewer, and street improvements. The applicant is requesting a variance of 11 foot from the required 21-foot buffer for a 10-foot buffer. The buffer required is that the developing use, once they redevelop the U-Haul facility, is other business uses, and the abutting use of the men's shelter is medium intensity institutional. So a Class C buffer is required. The U-Haul facility's square acreage is 4.5, so it would require a 28-foot buffer. And then the buffer can be reduced 25% with the use of a fence, which gets them down to 21-foot buffer requirement. So the existing buffer is 0 feet. So they're asking for the 10-foot buffer. Exhibit 7 is a consideration that shows the width of the property adjacent to the street improvements. And you can see that it's about 24 and 25 feet wide, going to about 26 feet. So the area that will be used for the street improvement is greater than the variance that they're requesting of 11 feet from the 21-foot buffer. Exhibit 8 is a consideration that the new design of the property along with the street improvements will move the driveway further from the intersection. Right now, there's a driveway right at the intersection of Tryon and 16th, and it will allow increased area for emergency vehicle maneuvering on the site. Exhibit 10 is another consideration, and that's that many different city departments have approved the streetscape plan, so everyone is aware of the improvements that will be made to this intersection. Government Exhibit 10 is a photo from East 16th Street. Government Exhibit 11 is a photo of the property from North Tryon Street. And that's my presentation if you had any questions.
Are there any questions for staff? Hearing none, is there any reason the board wishes to move this to the regular agenda? We're having some connection problems. Is there a motion from the board for approval of this variance?
I vote to approve this variance. Deborah Dryden.
I second the motion. This is Douglas Wilson.
All right, we have a motion by Mrs. Dryden to approve the variance. We have a second by Mr. Wilson. We'll take a roll call vote. Mrs. Dryden?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson? Mr. Wilson?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Yes, this is Doug. Yes.
Okay, Mr. Brown?
Brown, yes.
Mr. Floyd?
Floyd, yes.
Sanderson, yes. Case is approved. The variance is approved. Let's look at the findings of fact and conclusions of law. I didn't see anything.
I didn't see anything as well.
Same here.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the findings of fact and conclusion of law as written.
Second by Douglas Wilson.
We have a motion by Mr. Brown to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law as written. A second by Mr. Wilson. Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Floyd, what's your vote on the approval of the findings of fact and conclusions of law?
Yes.
Mrs. Dryden?
Yes.
Sanderson, yes. The findings of fact and conclusions of law are approved as written. The next case is 2020-023.
All right, this is for a residential setback variance, and the applicant is requesting a variance for a 7-foot reduction to the required 20-foot transitional setback along Hawthorne Lane to allow for the construction of a new duplex. And I'll give you a minute to look at your findings.
Yes, you can go ahead and proceed.
Okay. Exhibit 1 is a vicinity map of the subject property. Exhibit 2 is a zoning map of the property. The property is zoned R22MF, which is a multifamily zoning. Exhibit 3 is an aerial map of the property. And Exhibit 4 is a close-up aerial map of the property. Exhibit 5 shows the background of the property. The property is located on Hawthorne Lane, and I've highlighted in yellow the sewer and storm drainage easements on the property, as well as the property line shown in green. And so you can see that the property has a substantial amount of area that's taken up by the sewer and storm drain easements. Exhibit 6 is more of the background of the property. The applicant proposes to build a duplex on the property, and the proposed right-of-way from the street is 30 feet. The existing right-of-way is 25 feet from the center line, so that takes away an additional 5 feet that they can build. And on this slide 6, you can see the easement running right back along the rear of where they'd like to build. So it constrains the area and the footprint for building. Hawthorne Lane is a minor arterial, and so that's why we have that transitional setback. So the 20-foot setback for R22MF is going to be measured from that transitional setback, 30 feet from the right-of-way. So this area in yellow and green is that area that is constrained. Exhibit 7 shows the variance request. The applicant requests a variance of 7 feet from the required transitional setback. And this does encroach 2 feet into the required setback, which is measured from that existing right-of-way of 25 feet. So this red line shows where the front of the home would go, and you can see the little wings that are sticking out that are about 2 feet in front of the home. So they're what's encroaching into the required setback. Exhibit 8 is a consideration that the proposed home does meet the required minimum garage setback of 20 feet. And this keeps cars from the sidewalk and right-of-way area. So it does maintain that distance for safety. Exhibit 9 is another consideration. Charlotte Department of Transportation supports decreasing the transitional setback and maintaining the proposed right-of-way of 30 feet from the center line. And the reason for that is Hawthorne is within the high injury network, and it is a thoroughfare. So this will accommodate future roadway improvements and allow for safety. Exhibit number 10 is a photo of the property. The property is vacant right now, and it does go back quite a ways. So that's all I had if you had any questions.
This is Douglas Wilson. I have a question. Is the property on this exhibit the house that's the light green or the brick structure?
It's just the vacant property in between those.
Okay, thanks.
This is Deborah Dryden. I just want to clarify, looking at the front elevation of the house, the only thing that's going to intrude are partial structures, not the garage door itself. It's set back. Is that what they're saying? What's going to encroach?
Yeah, so this line right here, I think I'm on a delay, but there's a dashed line that's going through the front portion of the proposed home.
Right, I see that. Mm-hmm.
And then the garage doors and then the red line in front of it. So that dashed line is where the setback would fall if they had to abide by the strict regulation of the ordinance to do the 30 feet and then the 20 feet from that.
Because they can't go back any farther, is that correct?
Correct, because they have that storm drainage easement running right along the rear of where they propose.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff? Does the board see any reason to move this to the regular agenda at a future meeting? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
Yes, this is Douglas Will. Can I make a motion to approve the variance?
This is Terry Brown. I second that.
We have a motion by Mr. Wilson to approve the variance, a second by Mr. Brown. We'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Wilson?
Wilson, aye.
Mr. Brown?
Brown, yes.
Mr. Floyd?
Floyd, yes.
Mrs. Mrs. Dryden, do you have a vote?
Yes.
Sanderson, yes. The variance is approved. Let's look at the findings of fact and conclusions of law. I didn't see anything. Is there a motion?
This is Douglas Wilson. I make a motion to approve the findings and facts.
Okay. Is there a second?
This is John Floyd. I second.
Mr. Wilson, vote.
Yes, aye.
Thank you. Mr. Floyd?
Floyd, aye.
Mrs. Dryden?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Sanderson, yes. Findings of fact and conclusions of law are approved as written. Our next case is 2020-028.
Okay, this is a request for a residential rear yard variance. The applicant is requesting a variance of 9 feet from the required 45-foot minimum rear yard to expand the footprint of a garage and add a second-story addition. And I'll give you a minute to look at your findings.
You can go ahead, Lisa, and start.
Okay, Exhibit 1 is a vicinity map of the subject property. Exhibit 2 is a zoning map of the property. The property is zoned R3 single family and is in the Myers Park National Historic District, but it's not within a local historic district. Exhibit 3 is an aerial map of the property. And Exhibit 4 is a close-up aerial map of the property. You can see the property is located on a corner, and it's also an odd shape. Exhibit 5 is the background of the property. The original plat of the property is undated, and the home on the property was built in 1928, so it predates any zoning ordinance requirements. The home has a garage on it that is original to the home and is in need of repair. There's wood rot, structural damage, the roof is failing, and it won't accommodate modern garage doors, so they can't find doors that will fit on the garage. They want to do the depiction below and add a second story and also fix the garage, and this would accommodate a master bedroom suite. Exhibit number 7 shows the current garage encroachment of 5.8 feet into the 45-foot rear yard. This is compliant with the zoning ordinance because unheated encroachments, unheated additions to a home can encroach 25% of the depth of the rear yard. So this is within that requirement. Once the second story is added and that space is expanded, then that encroachment is no longer allowed, so it doesn't comply with ordinance regulations. So the applicant is requesting a variance of 9 feet from the 45-foot rear yard for a 36-foot rear yard to accommodate the addition and enlargement. Exhibit 9 is the consideration that the proposed addition follows the existing rear building line of the home. And you can also see that the rear property line is slanted and the depth becomes narrower towards the side where they'd like to add the second story in addition to the garage. Exhibit 10 is a consideration of the irregular lot shape in the angled rear lot line. And you can see that the lot is very odd. There's a significant portion that comes out at the corner, and there's not a lot of rear yard space. Exhibit 11 is another consideration. The subject property depth measures from 113 to 110 feet, and other properties in the area average a depth of about 163 feet. So the applicant's property has less depth to work with. Exhibit 12 is a consideration of the topography on the left of the property that would prevent adding on the northern side of the property. There's a retaining wall in the rear yard back on the right side, or in the left side. Exhibit 13 is a photo of the subject property. And that is the end of my presentation if you have any questions.
Lisa, so this is a legal non-conforming currently?
Currently, it's compliant because that garage is an unheated extension of the principal structure that's allowed to encroach.
But it appeared that the corner of the building or the house is within that setback as well, correct?
Oh, correct. Yes. On the main part of the structure, there is a existing non-conforming situation.
Building line at the house, correct? Is that correct?
Can you repeat the question?
I said that the proposed garage and second floor addition rear line is going to line up with the rear line of the existing house.
Correct.
So the proposed setback would be the rear or the structure.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions for staff from the board? Any reasons the board feels that this should be moved to a regular agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion?
This is Terry Brown. I move to approve the variance.
This is Deborah Dryden. I second that motion.
Mr. Brown to approve the Stryden. Have a roll call vote. Mr. Brown?
Brown, yes.
Stryden?
Yes.
Mr. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Anderson, yes. Approved with the findings of fact. I didn't see anything. Is there a motion to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law?
Terry Brown, motion to approve the findings of fact and conclusion of the law as written.
Thank you, Terry.
This is Douglas Wilson. I second the motion.
Thank you, Douglas. Take a roll call vote. Mr. Brown?
Brown,
to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law as written. Mr. Brown?
Brown, yes.
Vote for the findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Yeah, there's a slight delay. I'm not sure if you called my name, Rick.
Yeah. Yes, I did, Douglas.
Yes.
All right. Mrs. Dryden? Mrs. Dryden, you have a vote for the findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Dryden, yes.
Mr. Floyd?
Floyd, yes.
Sanderson, yes. All right. The findings of fact and conclusions of law are approved as written. We'll proceed to our last case, 2020-035. Lisa, you can go ahead.
Okay. This is an accessory structure setback variance, and the applicant is requesting a variance to construct a garage within the established setback. And I'll give you a minute to look at your findings.
All right, Lisa, you can proceed.
Okay. Exhibit 1 is a vicinity map of the subject property. Exhibit 2 is a zoning map of the property. The zoning is R3. Exhibit 3 is an aerial map of the property. The property is located along a stream. Exhibit 4 is a close-up aerial of the property. Exhibit 5 is the background of the property. The property was created through a subdivision plat in 1940, and the home on the property was built in 1967. The applicant is requesting a variance to locate a garage within the existing setback. According to the zoning ordinance, no accessory structure shall be located with any setback. So it can't be allowed in the established or the required setback on the property. Consideration on slide number 7 is that there's a swim buffer from the stream, and it's 50 feet on the back side of the property, and that restricts building from that area of the property. Exhibit 8 is considerations that there is a propane tank to the side of the property. And on the right side where the propane tank is located is where there's a little more area that construction might be feasible, but then there's that propane tank. And then there's also a septic field at the end of the driveway that they couldn't build in that septic tank area further back. So where they're showing the garage is the furthest back that they can place it on the property. Consideration 9 is a recommended condition that the proposed garage should be located outside the required 30-foot setback. The reason for this condition is that the applicant's plan shows a 15-foot front setback, but the setback is actually 30-foot required by the zoning ordinance, and the applicant has agreed to the proposed condition. Exhibit 10 is a photo showing the end of the driveway and that septic field location, and you can also see the propane tank. Exhibit 11 is the proposed garage location. And that is the end of my presentation if you had any questions.
Thank you, Lisa. Are there any questions for staff? Hearing none, is there a reason the board wishes to move this to the regular agenda? Is there a motion?
This is Douglas Wilson. I move to approve the variance.
This is Deborah Dryden. I second that motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Wilson to approve the variance and a second by Mrs. Dryden. We'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Wilson.
Wilson, yes.
Mrs. Dryden.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Brown, yes.
Mr. Floyd.
Floyd, yes.
Sanderson, yes. The variance is approved. Let's look at the findings of fact and conclusions of law. I didn't see anything.
I didn't see anything as well. Motion to approve the findings of fact and conclusion of law as written.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Is there a second?
John Floyd, I second.
Thank you. We'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Brown to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law as written.
Brown, yes.
Mr. Floyd.
Floyd, yes.
Mrs. Dryden.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Sanderson, yes. The findings of fact and conclusions of law are approved as written. The last bit of action items that we need to take as a board is the approval of the
There will be no minutes approved at this meeting.
Okay, so we don't have any minutes to approve, so therefore, are there any other items that the board needs to address at this meeting?
This is John Floyd. Didn't we have some findings of fact and conclusions of law from a prior meeting that still need to be approved?
That will have to be approved at the next in-person hearing.
Okay.
All right. Andrew, is there anything else the board needs to address today?
No, sir.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I will call the Zoning Board of Adjustments meeting to a close and adjourn the meeting. Hopefully at some point in the near future, we can get and have an in-person meeting. If not, then we'll try to do the next one this way if we have to. Hope everybody stays safe and have a great week.
Stay safe, everybody.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.